Yes, sir. Welcome back to another Chop or Die film session. I am your host of the Chop or Die podcast, Mual and Mual, Coach Mual, Hen Dog Mual, all that good stuff, man. And listen, we're here to break down Terry McLaurin. This film session is unique because there's been a lot of discussion about the receivers not being able to create separation, quote unquote, not being able to create separation, or Terry McLaurin in particular, a no catch game for a player of his caliber or his perceived caliber, however you may view him. I know this season has been rough for the offense and its playmakers, and some people are second guessing, the values into which they bring to this team. So we're going to look at a few plays just to kind of summarize the day that Terry had in his 25 snaps as a receiver where they're passing the football. So let's look at a few plays and just kind of dive into what I saw and then go from there. So like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. Let us know. Let's get into the film session right now. All right, so one of the ways in which the enemy used them, and I think actually, granted, if you all know, the day in which I'm recording this, the followers that are faithful to Chop or Dive, I was in Vegas over the past few days. So I really just wrapped up the film and it's given this session. But from what I remember in the post-game quote that Terry McLaurin gave, one of the things that he said that he was going to run his routes to clear out others. He was going to keep doing that, even though he's frustrated about, running cardio, right? This is one of those instances where he's running cardio. But one of the ways which the enemy used him on Sunday was that clear out method, right? Washington is facing somewhat of a man coverage. I think this is cover one to be exact, right? But the route was never, or the play was never intended to go his way. This was more so like if you look at both receivers. And here's another thing that you can think about. Like, look at the depth between Jahan Dotson and Terry McLaurin near the 40-yard mark and where they break their routes. I'm not saying that it has to line up because I'm not sure specifically the depth issues. But Terry isn't winning on a 20-yard curl in this instance, right? Like, he's not even like it was easy for him, for the defender to just stay in phase and turn around and show face to the quarterback. But again, this play is not even intended to go to Terry. It's just the fact that when you look at their depth, it's a little bit different. And it's like in the event that this corner route that Logan Thomas is running isn't open, who else is he throwing to? Looks like he's gonna have to throw it away. Sam Howell is, right? The point being, another way in which Eric Bieniemy used them was to clear out routes for players like Logan Thomas, right? So you have that deep curl, and then in that cover one situation where you're forcing that corner who's on Logan Thomas, as he's breaking in before he breaks back out to that sideline, it's to create that space towards the sideline for somebody to catch a run. Side note, a much more athletic and faster tight end than Logan Thomas is needed on this offense to make anything shake. But that's neither here or there. Point being, they gotta make something shake at tight end. Tight coverage right there. But at the same time, the play design in itself worked well. But Terry McLaurin uses a decoy in some instances where he was on the field. That was one of them. All right, here. This is one play where it was intended to go to Terry's way. It looks like a dagger concept. Typically, when you have that deep dig, right, and that clear out, looking at the top of your screen with the trips to the left side, and then you have Logan Thomas isolated at the bottom of your screen. I think that's Logan or maybe John Bates. Either way, you got that clear out by Jahan Dotson and a dig underneath versus that cover four scheme coverage call, right? But at this moment right here, where he's breaking in on that dig route, you're looking at kind of where Howell's eyes are going versus, in addition to Terry and the timing in which he breaks. I think if you're looking at somebody who needs to throw in anticipation in this specific moment, you will look at Sam and say, you got to let that rip right here because that dig is open. It's designed to go to Terry, but he holds on for a split second, right? So in this moment that he's holding on for a split second, he ultimately runs into Winkle for the sack. Obviously, 43 made a really good play, and we're showing that part here where, he's able to take advantage of where Howell's set or where his depth is in the pocket and easily beat Wiley on a spin move and ultimately Sam runs right into him for the sack. I think he felt, Sam did, that Winkle had went too far upfield, which he did, but I think he assumed that he was washed beyond the arc. So he's planning to escape and do his scramble thing, right? But again, let's go back to the eyes of Sam. Look where his eyes are right now. I would assume it's on Terry McLaurin. It should be on Terry McLaurin as he's breaking in for this dig route. Because again, this is when it's timing. You need the anticipation to make this throw. And for some reason, the ball wasn't out. And now he takes off. Maybe he wasn't sure of what he was seeing. But again, you're talking about one route in which Terry McLaurin should have been targeted and he wasn't. That's a gigantic window, a throw window that needs to, the ball needs to be ripped as soon as possible, in my opinion. And that's kind of what this looks like for Terry in this instance. He does a really good job just understanding where the outside corner is, playing that outside leverage, right? But also knowing, having that feel for where he can create enough space and separation in that zone void to settle. He ultimately carried the route. I guess he thought that Sam Howell was going to scramble out, and I guess he did to an extent, but he got sacked. So there you go. That's one instance where you're talking about he should have been targeted. Another thing about targets too, he had 3 targets on the day. It's important to note it was only one true target for Terry McLaurin in this game. True target meaning like one that actually counted, one that was actually catchable, one that was actually a fair opportunity for Terry, right? The other 2 were BS, and we'll go through those as well. Another thing that is important to note, as I talked about his true targets, is also how Miami played Washington on Sunday, right? You're talking about a defense that has played tremendously well for a couple months stretch at this point under Vic Fangio, right? One of the OGs that knows a lot about defenses. And he really mastered the cover match or the match zone, match man schemes really well, especially in those cover 4 principles and stuff like that. But another way that he was limited on Sunday was how they played him. And the enemy used these crossers a couple times with Terry, right? Where you're talking about you're leaving no room. Look at that first level in terms of Miami, to be clear. You're leaving no room for them to connect on any short level throw, right? They're passing off well. And then on top of that, when you have Jalen Ramsey on one side of the defense and then Xavier Howard on the other side of the defense, you can carry this crosser as much as you need to, especially for a linebacker, right? Who's in the middle of the field, who's not going to be as fast as Terry. So you got to eliminate that throw window if you're Miami, and they did a really good job of eliminating that. You're going to see in one of the targets that shouldn't have been a target to Terry, how they play these shallow crosses. And again, you're talking about Xavier Howard getting in trail, running his ass off to make sure that Terry doesn't get this easy completion, right? And then you see that middle linebacker carrying, and eventually Howard passes off, right? That's the thing. Howard eventually passes off when that linebacker is able to keep up and stay in phase with Terry. Ultimately, Sam Howell does get sacked, right? But at the same time, this is a well-covered play, but also there's some opportunity here if Brian Robinson gets out a little bit quicker, because if you see at the top of your screen by that 40-yard marker, that defender is going to come out and check Brian, which ultimately leaves, I think that's Logan Thomas open on that curl route. No, that's Cole Turner. That's my boy Cole. So he's open, but at the same time, you kind of see how they're covering this, right? And it doesn't help that Wiley has to take a wide pass set, right? And a deep pass set that forces Brian Robinson to go around that defensive end. And that's ultimately what you run into with those problems on that boundary side. But if you're talking about the field side and how they carry Terry, there you go, like covered. All right. And Miami did a really good job again from the secondary part, just being able to plaster and stay disciplined in their coverage principles. Here's your one true target for Terry McLaurin. And let's kind of peel back every layer, right? We're going to start from receiver down to the quarterback, right? So let's talk about what happens at a receiver, right? You're talking about going up against Xavier Howard. You're looking at a cover 0 situation. They're sending the house. I think this is a 1st and 10, but they're sending the house against Washington in this instance, right? And Terry McLaurin has a really or a decent enough acceleration off the line, right, to get him to his route phase. So at this point is where I get a little confused, because it's like, are we running a corner post, or could we have stayed with the post route? Given where the ball placement was from Sam Howell, I'm going to assume that Terry ran the right route. So let's kind of dead that. In my opinion, I think that Terry ran the right route. So he's getting to his break point, right? And I think for Terry in this offense, what really hurts Washington sometimes is like Terry is a full speed route guy. Like that's what he specializes in, right? Sometimes he doesn't always break you down at the top of your routes. He's not going to manipulate the hips in a sense, like with his head fakes, his shoulder fakes, like he kind of rushes into him and it's easy to stay in phase. This is one example of that, right? And ultimately, Howard stays in phase. Mind you, he is a good cornerback. Howard is. So let's not take away too much from him. But he kind of gets on top of Howard slightly, but Howard's still in position. It has to be a perfect ball. And you're asking Terry to make that catch. Obviously, we know Terry's specialty, right? It's contested catch situations. And for Terry, this is one of the ones where you would hope. Now, he is going over the shoulder. Those are really hard catches to make. I don't know if there was any other adjustment he could have made in this instance that would allow him to have a better chance of catching the football. But you would have hoped, just generally, like when you get that one opportunity for Terry, you make something shake. So again, that's from the Terry side. Let's look at the offensive line, right? You're talking about a cover zero situation where now they're sending the house. And for whatever the protection scheme was, right? I don't know specifically, but I look at Charles Leno and I look at Chris Paul. They're kind of filtering in 75, 69, 76. Those are the interior offensive linemen. They're kind of filtering in and pinching in this instance, right? But Wiley, 71, and Leno, 72, is not, right? It looks like, from my perspective, that Leno is anticipating two, who is, I forgot their rusher name, but you know who I'm saying. In the comments, and people that's watching, you know who that is. But he's anticipating two rushing. So two stays in coverage. And he's not even aware of the second level blitzer coming in until it's too late, right? So I don't know if Chris Paul was going to be able, if he was supposed to have eyes on that second level, right? Or if he was just paying attention to a line game. But Leno has no idea, or he shows that he has no idea that he has a blitzer from the second level. John Bates sees it because he's like, oh shit. John Bates sees it, but Leno doesn't. Ultimately, he comes in free, untouched, unaccounted for, and I don't know who was at fault between 75 and 72, but the protection in itself, or the idea to keep these guys in, would have picked up the blitz. But how do you let one go free when you have seven in terms of your tight end and both your tight ends having that block and release before they get out into their routes? Yet Sam Howell gets smacked, and it should have been picked up. So again, and then we talk about the quarterback. That's a good job getting the ball out there. Like he said, he just heaved that bitch. That's what he did. He heaved it and it got there. So that's one of the ones where you're like, damn, bro, like I really need my number one receiver to help me out in this instance and make the play when I can get the ball out there. We're struggling. We're going up against the Miami Dolphins. We're down 55-0. I need you to make a play. But yeah, that's that, man. So here's another instance, right, where you're talking about Terry's opportunities. Now, this is a cover 6, right? So you're playing quarters to the field side. To the top of your screen because they're kind of in the middle, right? But you have Terry essentially isolated from what was, I think, a 2-by-2 situation, and then motioning John over to a trip side, right? And I think for Washington, again, remember I said about how Xavier Howard and Jalen Ramsey, you can man these guys up against some of your best receivers because of who you have at cornerback, right? And the rest of the team just plays zone. And I think Vic Fangio is really good at installing his plays and his concepts, but also clearly a good teacher because everybody's in sync here. But for Washington, when you have that one-man opportunity with Terry against whoever, want to take advantage of that. And here, Terry actually wins against Jalen Ramsey. And I told you that Terry struggles at the top of his route sometimes to separate with his manipulating the hips and having those fakes, those subtle movements with his upper body that influences the defender. And I thought that he did a really good job here, right? It got Jalen Ramsey, who was already in a solid trail position, right? He also beat him at the line, but Jalen Ramsey gave him that outside. He just stayed inside and just made sure that he wouldn't break inside. And Terry did a really good job of feeling that. Like, that's how you understand the coverage that you're up against, right? He knows that it's man coverage. He knows that I have to give him something at the top of the route because I want to break back inside. So Terry wins. But unfortunately, at this point, it turns into a scramble drill. And this is where you're talking about a target, right? A true target for Terry that you don't get because a play breaks down. And that is another instance where, Curtis Samuel ultimately makes the catch. But if you're talking about opportunities for Terry, there are some that he wins. And then there are some where you're talking about a coverage that is perfectly placed or perfectly installed to defend against what you want to do with Terry, or you're talking about a moment where Terry is used to clear out something. So you're talking about that dig route right here, and the way the play is structured. Sam isn't backing out of the pocket into the extent in which he is, and aka pressure, right? You're talking about Terry being open in the middle of the field, but he has to break his route off, and it converts into a scramble drill. And again, another part, he's open right here if Sam sees him, but he goes for Curtis. Completion is what it is. But point being, you see it on the film with the bird's eye view. Lastly, here's a red zone opportunity where I thought, again, I mentioned that anticipation part with Hal earlier. This one has a lot to do with a combination of things here. We'll run it and then we'll kind of go back to it. But you see this moment right here. There's a lot up front. You're talking about protection issue, and you're talking about a quarterback who could have avoided the pressure that he invited into himself if you just step up and make the throw within time. So let's kind of start here and see the angle, right? This now is against Xavier Howard. You're talking about a cover 1, I think, or maybe cover 3. It's kind of, I want to say cover 3. But anyway, he's able to get vertical, right? Like that one instance, we'll run it back one more time. He takes an inside release, gives him a little move at the line, which hesitates or freezes Howard just a little bit, opens up his hips to the outside, excuse me. But Terry is able to take advantage of that, push vertically in that split second, right? Pushes vertically, and then breaks right back in for that dig route. Puts Howard on his ass. Puts Howard on his ass. He's wide open right now. Look at where Sam is. Let's go ahead and go back. Look where Sam is. Did you see that? His first step at the top of his drop was another step backwards. That's wasted movement. So now we go up to the end zone angle where you can kind of see it from his angle of just what this is at the top of his drop, what he does, inviting pressure. That one step backwards allows that pass rush to continue moving forward, right? But if we're throwing with anticipation and if we're using our footwork efficiently in the pocket, we're talking about a pass that's completed to Terry and maybe even a touchdown. And now, because he steps up late, right, he runs right into the guy that's free. And he throws it away. I didn't even get to this part yet. He threw it away or tried to target Terry at the last second because he's like, bro, I saw him open. I got to try to give him the football. And Terry now has to play DB. So you're talking about an opportunity where Terry was wide open because he did his job right, and things up front did not work well. So now we talk about the offensive line and what really hurt them as well. Again, Hal has a completion here. You want to expect him to do more. That's an opportunity for completion. But this one, Larson is getting bulled back. He had some help initially from Sam Cosmi, but now Sam Cosmi, once he sees that Larson is able to get some leverage on the pass rusher Wilkins, he sees Winkle over there and gives Wiley some help, right? But now you're talking about Leno and who is that? Chris Paul doubling that one dude. I can't see his jersey name. But here's the other thing. With Chris Rodriguez into block, right? He's staying in. Miami is ultimately running a green dog. And if we know what that green dog is, when that running back stays in, that linebacker who is manned up against the running back has the green light to go blitz the quarterback. And that's what you see right there. That's exactly what you see. A person coming in uncovered, unaccounted for, because you're talking about Chris Rodriguez, who's on the left side, right? John Bates and Chris Rodriguez take on this guy, whoever that is, number 9. I can't see. 91, whoever. Anyway, and then the linebacker covering Chris ultimately gets a rush rep uncovered, easy sack, or could have been an easy sack. So again, you're seeing from all three levels, from Terry, how he's able to win this one, but then also from a protection standpoint and from Sam Howell's standpoint, the inability to make the play as efficient as possible. Yeah, man, it all sucks right now. No, I'm just playing. It's not good. It's nowhere near good. I think there's several issues as always when it comes to things like this, like what's going on. Why isn't Terry getting open? There's also plays where you're looking at crossing routes where like the spacing and splits aren't proper, right? You're taking false steps because you don't want to step on toes of your receivers. You're too close or you're not wide enough. And I think that ultimately hurts the receiver side as well. These are several different things. It goes from coordinator to receivers. It goes from offensive line to quarterback, right? These are multiple things that is causing these issues, and I want that to be clear. Again, I pointed out some things that when it comes to separation parts that Terry, I think, can do better. But also, I think that there's some instances where he does win. He just doesn't win all the time in some of those specific instances. But he does get open. The question is about how often. But then it's also about what happens when he does get open, or if he does have leverage, or if he does have an opportunity to make a play on the football. Like, all those are important as well, and that can kind of muddy things up from that perspective. I think it's all important to keep those things in mind as you look forward to these last 3 games under Eric Bieniemy, or last 4 games under Eric Bieniemy. How exactly does Sam Howell continue to progress and give his receivers opportunities, right? And then also, Can the offensive line hold up at all? I think we have our answer for the offensive line part, but it's also important to ask that question because are you really going to get tremendously better games from your receivers over the last 4 stretches? You're playing against really good defenses, all top 15, and I think 3 of them are top 10. So that's something to consider as well as you move forward. But I hope you all enjoyed the video. Just some examples of what Terry looks like, especially against the Miami Dolphins. A very good coverage secondary, a very good rush line. They had a really good rush plan against the against the Washington Commanders, and all that needs to be taken into account, especially when you think about how the coaches can keep these guys in position to succeed, but also the quarterback being able to give these guys a chance to win downfield. So without all that being said, man, I hope you all enjoyed. Like, comment, subscribe once again, man. We out here. Till next time. Peace.
Chop it down. Chop it down. Chop it down. You gon' chop it down. Chop it down. You gon' chop it down. Damn, set. Watch him throw the ball. Man. We gon' pick it off. You gon' let him hit the hole or you gon' cut it off. You gon' play through 4th and long or you gon' punt it off. Your defenders heavy hitters, put your pads in. Don't be looking for the ref to throw no flags in. Keep the helmet on, keep the cleats tight. You the type to want to win by any means, right? You should look alive. This is Trap or Dive.